let's turn our eyes to something that I would say this year has definitely given people a little bit of concern. Thousands of federal employees, they're facing buyout offers and terminations from the Trump administration's DOGE initiative. The stakes are high. You could take a buyout, which might be a nice windfall right now, but it could jeopardize long-term benefits like pensions and health care. Those that are vowing to stay, they could be terminated without a severance, nothing to show for it. So I know this is a question you guys have received so far. How have you helped federal employees make choices as critical as these?
This actually can be good news, I think, for a lot of folks. Can be bad news for folks in different situations. Mm-hmm. Scott, I know we just had some folks that came into the office. Mm-hmm. We'll call them Mark and Lisa. And they were probably a couple of years out from retirement, but mm-hmm. ended up making a decision to take this buyout offer. And in their situation, when we took a look at it, I think they initially had come in and talked to you a little bit about some of the health insurance and trying to navigate that. That can be kind of a scary question when you're thinking about taking a buyout, especially if you're before the age 65 and figuring out, some of the health insurances that are out there.
Yeah, one of the things you want to obviously be prepared for is, if you take that early buyout, they're not going to extend your insurance. I mean, they may extend COBRA to you, and COBRA can be a very, very costly monthly expense that you're going to have. A lot of people don't really understand exactly how COBRA works. It's just a continuation of your current benefits. But the other thing is, if you're not going to take COBRA, then you're going to look at the Unaffordable Care Act. And when you're looking at that, it takes into account your reportable income. So if you take a buyout and you get that windfall, if you don't properly invest that windfall, that's going to be reportable income, and your insurance premiums could be drastically impacted by that. Even with Medicare, if you're a year or two away from Medicare, taking that large income, because Medicare looks back 2 years, okay? So like for 2025, we're looking at what was your reportable income in 23. Well, if you took that windfall buyout in 23 and your income that particular year was quite high, you could pay substantially higher Part B premiums. And a lot of people aren't familiar with that and don't even know that that's an option for Medicare. So you really want to make sure that if you're looking at taking the buyout, what am I going to do with that windfall? And that's where you come into play and where you really help. And that's why we work together, is to kind of, make sure we maximize their either subsidies for their health insurance if they get those, or minimize their taxes.
Yeah, I think true. For Mark and Lisa, that's when you had pulled me into the equation to help answer the question of, do I take a buyout? If so, do I take it all as a buyout? They had other options where they could take a partial buyout, mm-hmm. and they had some other options where they could take either a single life payment, meaning for the retiree Mark's entire life. He also had the option where he could take a 100% survivorship option. So that means, him and Lisa would get the same income for the rest of their lifetime. And, going through that, that's where we had kind of crunched the numbers. On the one, you think, oh, this big lump sum of money seems like a great idea. Mm-hmm. But when you think about them being fairly young, not quite even Medicare age, they need to have income for the rest of their lifetime. And, luckily they had other investment assets. And so in their particular situation, we lean towards them taking the monthly income payment, 100% guaranteed for both of their lifetimes. So we had this now good amount of money that is reliable income to cover the minimum monthly income needs that they have. Then what we did is we put together one of those retirement team action plans, and we went over that with them a few days ago. Within the retirement team action plan, again, what we're doing is we're looking at those threats and opportunities, to identify what are the ways that we could drive things up. In doing the portfolio analysis, one of the things that jumped out to me right away is, of their financial assets, they had roughly 40% of their money in cash, mm-hmm. bank accounts. And I get it, right? If you think about it, you want to have some of your money safe, not exposed to market risk. And then some of your money invested more for long-term growth could be a little bit risky. The problem was, by parking the money in the bank accounts, just a traditional bank savings doesn't really pay much at all. And so there's some money that could definitely be repositioned to make that money work and, put it in their best interest to try to earn some more money while keeping some liquidity because, as they transition into retirement time, obviously needing to have liquidity. The other nice thing about that is when you were talking about taking the severance, they're going to take a partial lump sum payment, meaning they're going to take part of it in a lump sum, but they have the ability to roll that money over to a self-directed IRA. And so if they do that, it's reportable but not taxable income.
Sure.
Meaning that then they could live off of those bank account assets, which would not be considered countable income,
Right.
to help bridge that gap. So when you call it unaffordable health insurance, it's for those people that are not familiar with how to navigate, how they calculate what those expenses are. That gives them, some flexibility to be able to bridge the gap to get them to Medicare age. Then what we did is we did the independent portfolio analysis and we took a look at what their overall investment assets are and how they were positioned. And they had, in my opinion, a lot of unproductive assets that weren't working hard for them. So they're paying somebody to manage their money in short-term investments that are earning minimal interest rates. So when you factor in, retirement account hasn't been taxed yet, and also the interest rate was so low, they're actually negative inside of there. Building out that independent income system then gave them confidence to know more about how to position their assets, put it together and to kind of build out that plan. So if you get into that situation, whether you're a federal, whether you're a state employee, and you're thinking, this may become something that happens to me, whether it's this year or within 5 years, think of the fact and realize the fact that many of the decisions that you make are going to be irrevocable decisions. So had you not pulled me in with Mark and Lisa and he would have taken the full lump sum payout, hopefully he made the right investment choices with that over time, because in that case, the government wasn't obligated to continue to give him and his wife money for the rest of their lifetime. So those are irrevocable decisions that you make, just like irrevocable decisions of when to, start collecting Social Security. These are things that we can kind of help you navigate. So if you are in that boat and think that you might get offered a buyout within the next 5 years, again, one of those things, like we talk about running the fire safety drill, let's run it now. That gives time for Scott to work on a health insurance strategy if you need to do things a year or two before. As he talks about, they look back.
Sure.
That gives you time to work with us on the investment side and the tax side to say, how do you fit it all together? And that's what we do in that retirement team action plan.
Nolan, I'll add one more thing real quick. I know we're coming up to a break here, but a year ago I had another client that actually lost their job from a local hospital when they closed, and they had those options as well. And the nice thing with them is they had roughly $125,000 of cash in a savings account. And we were able to look at an opportunity for them to take the maximum monthly distribution on their buyout and then write a life insurance policy in case, because one of their big concerns was, well, if I die, I want my spouse to get a portion of that. So they were looking at saving roughly $400 a month in their buyout. We were able to position them by taking a portion of that savings money. We call it lazy money. Really, it wasn't working for them at all. We ended up putting that into a life insurance policy on her. And if she unfortunately were to pass away prematurely, that would offset the 100% distribution that they were going to get. And these are things that you guys do a phenomenal job at, working with different ways to take the money that you have in your investments and make it work more powerful for you.
Well, what I love about that example and what you talked about, again, in the example that we talked about with Mark and Lisa, they took a 100% survivorship option. But at the end of the day, when Mark and Lisa are gone, that pension's over.
Right.
There's no more income coming into the family. With the choice that you had talked about with the client that you were working with, the advantage of that is if the one spouse passes away and the other spouse who owns the life insurance, they could do one of two things, right? They could cancel the life insurance, stop making those premium payments, or they could change the beneficiary.
Sure.
So they could change the beneficiary to their kids. So now there's even more money that's left over in their case. This is one of those areas, again, it's not a water cooler discussion. In fact, it's your individual situation. Another couple that just recently came into the office, they have done fantastic saving and investing. They grew a pretty significant nest egg. And so when you looked at it, taking the lump sum payment made the most sense in their situation because they didn't need the monthly income.
Right.
They had already had that covered from other sources as well. So again, some individual advice there on what looks right in your situation, but there, surprisingly, as Scott pointed out, there can be some different strategies that maybe the company never talked to you about, maybe the government never showed you about. They just wanted you to fill out the paperwork and make a decision.
Whether you're in the private sector or the public sector, the options of a buyout is definitely one of those measure twice, cut once sort of situations. Have a team like America's Retirement Headquarters weigh the pros and cons, help you find out the best strategy for you going forward, and how to, even though it may not seem like it, still be able to retire on your own terms. It all starts by reaching out, setting up a time to speak with them. 419-794-3030. That's again, 419-794-3030. You can also go to the website as well, and that is arhq.com.